Prove it. Well, welcome everyone. This is Sally DeSestri. Welcome to Alchemy of Healing. This is where we investigate and explore the very many ways there are to heal, because healing takes place on many different levels and often with many different modalities. So we're always investigating, exploring, and experiencing all sorts of things. And tonight we have the pleasure of having an expert with us, an expert in astrology. Malcolm Gladstone said it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert. And our guest, Alexa, started studying astrology when she was in preteen years. So I'm sure you put in more than enough hours to be considered an expert. And plus you've been practicing a while as well. She was always, she was drawn to the moon and the stars and the planets from a very young age and got trained by an NCGR certified astrologist. And I looked up what that was because I was curious. It's the National Council for Geocosmic Research up in Massachusetts. No surprise. Founded for the purpose of fundraising standards for astrological education and research. So you were trained by somebody who was using these high standards that they had instilled in themselves. So welcome, Alexa Durose. I am looking so forward into hearing what you have to share and how we can use the stars and what we can learn about them to help us in our lives and keep us healthy and happy and strong. Take it away.
Hi, Amanda. Hi, Sam. So Amanda, just out of curiosity, since we don't have too many people here, what knowledge do you have of astrology?
I'm looking at that chart that you have up. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm looking at that chart you have up and I actually know what's going on with that. So I know that much.
Okay.
Recent reading and kind of studying that. So I know like my rising sign and my sun sign and my moon sign.
Okay.
But, like I said, I do find that different books have different information. So I have a hard time sometimes knowing what I want to work with it. And I'm sure you'll have some, knowledge on that, Alexa. And that's kind of why I'm here is I'm like, man, I really need just like a brain download of what's going on here. So.
Okay. So I'm going to deviate from what I was going to do. I was going to go over what each planet represents and what it means personally, in the chart. But since you already kind of know that, and since I know Sam knows a bit about that, I don't really want to waste anyone's time or say things that you already know. So Amanda, what is something specific that you're curious about or that you're learning or want to learn more about?
Well, I guess how many planets are you, and I know that we call like certain things planets that aren't necessarily planets, but how many are you basing it on? Because I see some are like 9, some are 7. So I'm just so confused with that. Does that question make sense?
Yes. Okay, so typically, especially when you are first learning astrology, what you want to focus on would be the personal planets, the societal planets, and then the outer planets. So for personal planets, we have the sun, of course, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. We call those personal planets. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, that's for everyone because I personally only know what I learned from reading horoscopes, which I know,
Horoscopes. Yeah, so horoscopes,
Yeah, you don't have to start with that right yet because you're on a path. But so those are the planets that if I'm considering my personal reading, explain a little bit for people who might not know what
Right.
are personal what are personal planets? Just a 5 second thing.
Right. So the personal planets, which I just listed, those planets move more quickly through the zodiac signs. So those are going to affect us on a deeper level. Your sun sign is what would be in a horoscope, Sally. That's what you were just discussing.
Yeah.
So horoscopes are always based just on your sun sign. The problem is your sun sign is only really your day-to-day personality, kind of your surface level self, your conscious self. Then you have the moon, and the moon rules over your emotions and how you react to things on an emotional level. So a horoscope could be, I'm an Aries. So an Aries horoscope could say, today you're going to be feeling blah, 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 blah. And that could be completely off. And that is because my moon sign is in Cancer. So my feelings are based on that, not on Aries, if that makes sense.
It makes some sense to me, yes. And so what you're telling, and sorry, Amanda, I'm digressing here a little bit just so that I have a background and a base. So what you're telling me is that when I would get a reading done by a professional like you, it's best if I know where the moon and the sun would be when I was born.
So you don't need to know that at all. When you're getting a reading done, what you need to know is your date of birth, your time of birth, and birth location. Time of birth is the most difficult for people to come across. There are a lot of people that do not know their birth time and they can't figure it out. So we try to do a best guess. And the reason that birth time is important is because if we look at this chart that I have pulled up, Amanda mentioned the rising sign. So your rising sign is how people perceive you. It is the sign that people believe you are. So in this chart, the rising sign is Capricorn. So people would perceive this person as a Capricorn, even though their sun is in Cancer. So like when they would first meet the person, they would feel like they have traits of a Capricorn.
I see. So that makes a lot of sense.
Right. So the way the chart
I'm going to put myself on, see if I can stop my video if that helps. So folks, if Alexa drops off, we will just wait until she gets back up. Okay. Apologies for this. I'm just going to.
Okay.
Go right ahead, Alexa.
Thank you. So rising signs. Rising signs determine how people perceive you. And they kind of are, I like to refer to the rising sign as the mask that you wear to people who don't really know you that well. It's how people who meet you maybe once or in passing get to know you. In my case, my rising sign is Capricorn. So when people meet me, they tend to think I am a Capricorn or that I have Capricorn qualities. But I'm an Aries sun sign. So that's an example of how that plays out in real life. So going back to personal planets, we have Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Those are the 5 personal planets. And again, those are personal planets, and we refer to them as that because they move very quickly through the zodiac signs, and they will affect us on a deeper level. And then we move to the societal planets. Those would be Jupiter and Saturn. Now, those still have a good bit of influence on our personality and on our chart. But the thing is, they move through the signs much slower. Saturn tends to switch signs every 2.5 years. Jupiter will stay in a sign about a year. So because of that, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people born in the same year are going to more than likely have the same Jupiter and Saturn sign. And that's why we call them societal planets, because while they do have influence over our personality, they aren't quite as personal, if you will, as like your moon sign, because the moon switches signs every 2.5 days. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then we move to the outer planets. That would be Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Pluto is still a planet for astrological purposes. And those planets move very, very slowly. So again, those have an influence, of course, on our personality, but a lot of times we also refer to them as generational planets because they tend to influence the entire generation and not so much the person as an individual. Now, what we do is we look at the placement of those 3 planets in the natal chart. We look at which house they fall into, and we look at what aspects are being made to other planets in the natal chart. And based on that, we can learn some more information about a person. So if we're looking at Sam's chart, for example, Sam has her Neptune Sam has her Neptune sextile Pluto. Sextile is when 2 planets are 2 signs apart or 60 degrees apart. So in this case, she has an aspect going between Neptune and Pluto, 2 of the what we call generational or outer planets. But that is going to have an influence in her chart because she has that positive aspect going on between the 2 planets. So those are the kinds of things we look at, and also checking to see where they land in the chart, like I was saying. So in Sam's case, she has Pluto in the 2nd house and Neptune in the 3rd. So we look at those kinds of things to see how they will influence the person, because normally those planets are not going to be the ones that we look at immediately when we're looking at personality traits.
Okay. And how often would one get their chart reading done?
Okay, so this is getting us into another topic with astrology. So in astrology, we have what are called transits. That is the planets today. So your natal chart is a snapshot of the moment that you were born. That's where the planets were at that time on that day. But we know that the planets continue to move. So we add in what we call transits. And when we add in the transits, what we're looking at is we are looking at where the planets currently are. So Sally, if you actually look at that website, if you scroll up just a bit, you'll see this blue button that says plus with transits. So if you click that, it'll pull up the transits and it'll put them on the outside of Sam's chart, and that'll help me explain that a bit better.
You mean down this way?
No, it's up at the top.
Okay. Might have to go.
Oh, go back to the other page, the other Astrologist.
Oh, this
page.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see where it says plus with transits? It's a blue button.
In a minute.
Okay.
It's a way. There it is. Yes. Okay.
There we go.
There you go.
So if you see outside of Sam's natal chart now, there's that light blue ring and the planets are in green. So right now, for example, the sun is in Leo.
Okay, which one is Leo?
Leo is the red. So if you look on the outside, there's a green circle with a dot in the middle. That is the astrological symbol or glyph for the sun. And then it's just outside of where we have that red, I don't even know how to describe that.
Yeah,
It's almost like a upside down horseshoe looking thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is what you're talking about when you say the sun, and then this is what you're talking about. Okay, that's Leo.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
So transit sun is currently in Leo. Sam's natal sun is in Taurus. So at the moment, those two are square. So you want to have an initial natal chart reading where you're having an astrologer look over your natal chart to tell you what is there. That's the first thing you want to do. Then as time goes on, you can have natal chart readings as often as you would like to check your transits, because checking your transits is going to tell you how the current astrological weather is affecting you on a personal level. And it can also help you figure out some upcoming changes in your life, potential, I don't want to say problems because I don't like using that word, but like some difficulties that you might encounter, and it'll help you prepare for those things. In my case, I have a hard aspect with transit Pluto in my chart. So my teacher, who you mentioned earlier, Sally, who also reads my natal chart for me at times, told me at the very beginning of the year that he would be shocked if I were in the same career at the end of the year. And I'm actually currently looking at changing jobs.
That's great.
And that's something I had been thinking about for quite some time. And I brought it up and he was like, well, yeah, because you have this going on. And I was like, oh, yeah, I do. And I realized he was right. And that was there. So
this would be a perfect time to do that, I'm assuming, if
yes,
that was your, okay. So
Yep.
maybe once a year would be a good idea, like maybe for a birthday or something like that.
Birthdays are always a great time to have a natal chart reading. That's what we call in astrology your solar return, right? Because the sun is returned to where it was on the day of your birth. So birthdays are always good, but even maybe 6 months after your birthday, just to see how things have moved, because again, those personal planets move pretty quickly. So just double checking to see what aspects are being made by those transiting planets is super helpful.
Yeah. So again, being remedial, and then feel free to pick up with Amanda, but a lot of this is just way above my comprehension. So
it's so hard to break it down, but I forget that.
Yeah, it's normal. It's like you're speaking, it's normal for you to speak that way. And it's normal for people who have had this kind of stuff done before, you know, to understand what you're saying.
Right.
So I would get a natal chart reading because I'd want to know more about what might be coming up for me that year. If it's a good time to do something.
Yeah.
If I have a big event coming up in my life, and I've heard people use these charts like for a book launch, when to put out. So is there health benefits to this as well, or how does that go?
You can, there are astrologers that specialize in that. That's something that I do not specialize in. So I don't want to say that I could definitively tell you that I can double check for health purposes. There are some things that we can look at, like there are signs for diabetes that we can find in the chart.
There you go. Yeah, that's good.
And we can see those things in a chart very easily. But I don't want to definitively guarantee that I could tell you something's going to happen with your health around this day, you know?
Right.
But there are definitely things that we can check for. And oftentimes it's accurate. I mean, there are certain things that I've seen that I've learned that astrologers look for, and I've never seen it be wrong yet. So
That's interesting. Thank you for that. So it has a lot of good ways to support you in your life, basically.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, you were talking about the book launch and that kind of thing. Fun fact, I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but JP Morgan was supposed to go on the Titanic. The reason he did not get on the Titanic was because his astrologer told him not to.
Wow. Yeah, right. So, woohoo.
And that's the thing.
That
The
is.
reason he didn't get on the Titanic was because Mercury was retrograde. And when Mercury is retrograde, we tend to see issues with travel. It's a bad time to travel. So I personally will not travel during a Mercury retrograde. And Sam can tell you, I tell my friends to try to avoid certain things during like a Mercury retrograde, or when other planets are retrograde, or during certain aspects. I will tell them, be aware of this.
Great. Lay low for a while. Thank you very much for that. That helps a lot. I appreciate it.
No problem.
And thank you, Amanda, for your patience. So you would ask something about 7 planets and 9 planets. So that's kind of interesting, because aren't there always the same number of planets, right?
Actually, let me clarify that question real quick.
Thank you.
So what I've experienced in using these charts online, like different charts, sometimes I get totally different answers, and it makes it really hard. Like, it puts planets in different places. Well, it makes a big difference, what house some of these planets are lying in. And maybe it's because some of mine are right on the cusp, but I do see a difference sometimes.
That's odd. Yeah, it shouldn't change though.
I know it shouldn't. That's why I don't know what chart to use. Like, I feel untrusting of the charts that I've used. So I'm gonna check out this one that you shared and see what it shows me compared to the other 2 that I have. Because I even printed them and held them side by side to make sure I wasn't crazy.
And they were at different degrees. The planets were at different degrees and different minutes.
Yeah, a little bit. Like one would have. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I never knew what to trust.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very fascinating. Okay. And your time, you didn't change your birth time, right?
No. Nope.
Hmm.
I even printed them. Like, I'll have to show them to you. I'll like screenshot them, show them to you at some point. But I'm going to look at the site that you shared and see what comes up and see which one is right. Yeah, it made it really frustrating to look up a lot of the stuff, because it could mean a huge difference in, personality trait.
Absolutely. An example of that would be, for me personally, my mom actually gave me the wrong birth time the first time I ran my natal chart. And then I eventually found something in my baby book that had the correct birth time on it. And I had to redo my chart. And I remember looking at my chart over and over and over again when I had the incorrect time, and thinking, some of this is right, but some of this just this isn't me. This doesn't seem right. And I remember feeling very frustrated by that, because I'm so into astrology, and I would read friends' charts and other people's charts, and I would nail it, and they'd be like, yeah, that's exactly like me. But then I would look at my own and I would be like, why isn't this right? And then I finally got my correct birth time and I adjusted my chart. Well, it changed my rising sign. So all of my houses changed, and all of the houses that my planets were in changed. So that created new meaning for those planetary positions, because they were in different houses in my chart. So once I adjusted my chart and I had the correct natal time, it definitely was me. Like, it was 100% dead on. So I understand, Amanda, why you're frustrated.
Thank you. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. But Astrologist is definitely a good website to use for pulling a natal chart. Now, it's not going to give you an explanation of what each of those planets means and, each sign in the house, but it will pull the chart for you.
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. So what was another question that you had, Amanda? I'm curious.
Well, okay, I'll ask. My whole reason that I was looking into it at the time was right before I had met Alexa online. And I was seeking purpose for my life. Like I just felt very empty, and I just felt like I really couldn't figure out, like, what in the heck am I doing here? I don't feel like I have even tomorrow in my future. And so, like Alexa said, you got to do a lot of research. So I had like two books that I had one on my phone and one in physical. And then I had my two birth charts that looked all wonky because they were two different charts. And I'm sitting here it takes a lot of time to cross-reference and to figure out what you're doing, even with the assistance of books.
Yeah.
It just takes a lot of time. I think it took like 6 hours, like that day, to just sit down and really get cracking and taking notes. And I had like 6 pages of notes, and then it was all wrong because I got another chart, and it wasn't severely wrong, but in two houses that are next to each other, it made a big difference if it was in, Scorpio, or if it was in the one next to it. So I found that to be frustrating. So when I couldn't get a solid answer on that, I kind of gave up after 6 hours in. But so my question would be, I got lost along the way. I couldn't quite figure. It said that kids would be a very important part of my life, and I thought that was very interesting because I've been really going back and forth of if I want to have children or not. And
where's your moon?
My moon, so I'm Scorpio sun. My moon is in Aquarius, and I'm a Cancer rising, which all of that totally makes so much sense.
Cancer rising. Yeah. Okay. What house is your moon in? Do you know?
It's Aquarius.
But which house? Is it like first house, second house, third house?
Oh, shoot, I don't know.
Okay. So
I don't remember that part.
During a reading, I would look at which house your moon is in and aspects being made to your moon. The moon rules over Cancer, the zodiac sign of Cancer, and Cancer and the moon rule over mom and motherhood. So looking at aspects being made to the moon could tell me a little bit more about what you would be like as a mom. Like for me, my moon is in Cancer. So my moon is at home in Cancer. That's the sign it rules over. One of the things.
Oh, see, I thought houses were the signs. So there we go. No. I don't even understand.
No, no. So that screen that Sally was sharing, if you look at it, there are there's the signs around the chart, the wheel, and you can see the signs, right? Like you can see up at the top on the midheaven on Sam's chart, we have Cancer, and down at the bottom for her, what we call the Imam Coeli, the IC, she has Capricorn. But then if you look in the center, you can see how there's like the pieces of the pie, if you will, right? And it's broken up into like 12 pieces of the pie.
My houses were changing. That's what was changing on my two charts, is the houses, and it was confusing me. Is there a reason that would happen?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about with my chart. So normally that image of Sam's chart that's up right there, it will not change. What's on the inside will not change because it's literally like a snapshot of when you were born. So the houses will not change over time. They're going to stay the same. So Sam's moon is in her first house. So I would look at your chart for something like that and to see the aspects being made to your moon in your chart. And then we could talk about what you would be like as a mom. I would also look at the 5th house, because the 5th house has to do with creativity, creation. So that includes children. So we would look at the 5th house to see if there's any negative aspects there. People who have Saturn in the 5th house have a tendency of not wanting to have children because they can feel that children would limit them, or there's some kind of overwhelming, almost like it's like a stressor. Like they feel like there's too much responsibility that comes with having a child. Because
Right.
Saturn has to do with responsibility, limitations, things of that nature, and 5th house is children. So if we see Saturn in the 5th house, we can kind of look at that and say, okay, so this person might not want children or may have difficulty having children. So those are things I could look at to,
Gotcha.
kind of discuss
Yeah.
motherhood.
I'm going to leave it to the professional. I think I'm just going to hand it on over to you and let you tell me what's going on.
That would be awesome. And
Yeah.
by the way, I typically do readings on the spot. So what I do during my readings is I have my clients provide me with their birth information as we start our session. And I put it into this website and I pull up the chart and I share the screen, just like Sally is right now. That way a client can see it. And then I go over the chart right in that moment, because I feel like there are so many, like you were discussing some of the websites that you've used to look at your chart, and they'll give you different explanations for what this means and for what that means. There's so many websites that can be used to pull a natal chart these days. There are a lot of people online, a lot of astrologers that you can go to, and they will tell you that they'll do a reading for you. And what their reading usually consists of is you give them your birth information, and then within a week, they'll give you something typed up to tell you what it means. Personally, I like to be able to talk to people. So I like to get that information at the beginning of my session, and then it becomes a talking session, and we just go over everything, and I read it on the spot, and I have no time to prepare in advance. That way I'm not like, cheating, if you will. I'm just looking at it right then and there, and I can find the most important things in the chart and we talk about it.
No, that's really cool because it's so much more personal. So, and if I, make sure that I am understanding what you're saying too, that way I can ask you a question.
Right.
So that's awesome. I look so forward to it. I really have been for a while. So yeah.
So Alexa, that brings up a really good point. How would someone get in touch with you to schedule a session with you?
So I have an Instagram page that I use, Cancer Moon Magic. Somebody can send me a message on there, or they can email me. My email address is also on my Instagram page. And we can schedule through either one of those. And we try to, work out a time that works for everyone. I try to accommodate because I'm on the East Coast, and I know not everyone is on the East Coast. So sometimes, we have to find a time that works for both of us that's not like midnight.
Yeah.
I've had clients that are in California and they say a time, and I'm like, no, that doesn't work for me because that's really late.
Yeah. Yeah, you want me to be able to focus, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So
Cool.
luckily with technology, with Zoom, we can do these things now, right?
Yes, which does make it super nice.
It does. It's very helpful.
I'll make sure that we get Cancer Moon Magic in the email that's going to go out, that's going to have the replay of this event tonight, and also your email address. I'll make sure that gets in there as well. Good.
Thank you.
So this has been really helpful. Is there anything? It just hit me. What a cool birthday gift for a newborn, right? What a cool way to gift a mom who has almost everything except for time. And we always want to know how to raise our kids, how to understand them. Well, this would be a
Absolutely.
really nice way to at least get a little bit of a grip.
Oh, it helps so much. I actually, I'm a mom to two girls, and I have absolutely pulled their natal charts and looked over them, and I use it to help myself with parenting them. And it's extremely effective.
Right, and it helps guide them too. So not
Absolutely.
only, right, not only do you have an inside scoop, but you can also say, look, here's something that can really be supportive for you. So what a nice skill you're teaching them for later on as well.
And I have done, and it's really cool for me to get to look at their charts, because I'm like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. And I can see the similarities between the two. My daughters actually have the same moon sign. So that is very helpful, because again, moon is how we process our emotions, and it's our emotional self. So on an emotional level, they process things the same way.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's really helpful to know that too.
Yeah.
And Mercury, earlier, Mercury rules over communication. So that shows us a person's communication style. So when I look at their charts, I can look at their Mercury signs, and that helps me know how best to communicate to them.
Right. So you can get your point across, or you can listen. I mean, listen differently, even probably as they're communicating to you.
Right.
Very,
So
very cool.
if we're, in a situation where, mom-daughter situation, my daughters are 12 and 17, where we're kind of arguing, I can kind of remember, okay, this is how they communicate. That's not going to be an effective way for me to handle this or to communicate my point across to them. Let me think of how best to communicate this to them via their communication style. So
Yeah.
I use this daily.
Yeah, and I've been enjoying your Instagram site. It's got a lot of, like Amanda mentioned, you're really supportive and you add a lot of support, just nice information, just feeling good. So
thank you, Sam. Yeah, so synastry is astrological compatibility. It's love astrology, if you will. So what we do for that is you take both people's natal charts and you create what's called a bi-wheel. You layer them. So you have one on the inside and one on the outside. And then what I do for synastry readings is I compare the aspects being made between the two charts. And that will help me tell a couple, these are your strengths and these are your weaknesses. This is where you guys are going to possibly have some issues. Like sometimes it can be communication issues, or it can be that they have a different perspective of the world. So maybe that's going to clash at times, but overall they're fine. So I can see those things all in a synastry reading in a bi-wheel. So I can kind of give some guidance as to, what might come up.
Yeah, so there are lots of uses. Right. That I would never have dreamed of that, but that makes so much sense. Because you can just put them on top of each other and look at them that way, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Works for friendships too.
I've done Sam and Sam's chart was my chart before. We've talked about it.
And then you get that inside look at somebody that way too. So that's super. That's super cool. I could see. I never would have considered those things until you talked. So it's really good to hear of all the many ways that astrology can be used. And it's not just your horoscope, you just taught me. And I have heard that. I've heard, don't listen to that. It's more of an entertainment. That's not the real thing. So I can't say I hang on everything, but that was the 70s. So everybody was,
oh yeah.
So it was a different time. And that was all kind of new. But I never really followed up with it, but I think I really feel like I missed some interesting information. So thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything, any points or tidbits you wanted to share, any ahas that either of you guys got from this call tonight that you'd like to share? Feel free to pop in and say.
We talk astrology a lot, so she might not have too much to add.
I'm sorry?
Sam hears me talk about astrology
Oh.
a lot. She might not have too much to add.
No, I just wanted to say that I think there were a couple points that I had in my head. One is that I love the way that you do your readings because, like you said, in addition to that, on the spot, you use your intuition while you're reading at the same time. And I feel like that really comes through in an in-person reading, and you can't get that same effect with just asking for an email with a bunch of aspects written out. It's not the same effect. So I feel like in addition to reading my chart, you're reading my energy simultaneously. And that is an added benefit of having you do an in-person natal chart reading. And then, yeah, in addition to the natal chart, you mentioned physical health, but to me, I feel like mental and emotional health are all these other aspects of health that really connect to astrology and your understanding of self, knowing your own personal challenges, struggles, major hurdles that you're going to have to jump through in life just because of when you were born and the how the planets are ruling over you. I think those are things that are really valuable for your own self-knowledge that can help you in your own personal journey. So it's really an invaluable service that a good astrologer can give you, and Alexa is the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Sam. That's wonderful. Wow. On that note, you did such a great job sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you know what I really appreciated is the fact that, not even though the questions were, to me, would have been like, well, me, I didn't know, but I heard you answer every question easily, and that's the sign of an expert, right? That's the sign of somebody who knows what they're doing. It's like it's a second nature for you. And the fact that you can do it on the fly, amazing. So kudos. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I truly love. It's fun. It's fun looking at natal charts and helping people understand themselves better.
Yeah, I bet when you see the light in their eyes when it's like, oh, that's why, or what, a realization. So cool. What a gift you can give. That's awesome. That's awesome. So guys, I will be having this posted for you, and you will be able to get in contact with Alexa for a gift you want to give to somebody else, for a reading for yourself, a gift for yourself. You don't have to wait for a birthday or something special because you deserve it right now, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I actually have done natal charts for newborns, by the way. It's funny that you mentioned that, Sally, because I have done that before a few times, actually. I'm
thinking it would be really helpful for my grandkids.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be really fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got all this list. So I will be in touch. I know I will.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much. For another thing, you were so calm, cool, and collected. The internet dropped and you joined us from vacation and you still picked it right back up. And here we are. You gave a wealth of information to all our people. So those listening on the replay, you really missed being here live. You could have asked any question and Alexa would have had an answer. So you'll have to reach out to her personally now. So Thank you very much for showing up and being here 100% present to share your knowledge. So Alexa, thank you very, very much. And I'll see y'all next week.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you,
Thank
Sally.
you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night,
Thank
ladies.
you. Good night,
Good night.
all.
Night.
Bye now.
Bye.